Hi guys, the Apple Guy here with another video, and today we're going to be tearing down a iPhone 3G. This iPhone 3G is broken, and with that being said, we just want to take a look at the components inside of it, from the display to the headphone jack to the vibration motors, and just see how the iPhone 3G was made up in components and things like that. So here's the iPhone 3G that's in front of us. I do have my screwdriver. And we are first going to take off the screws at the bottom. And the iPhone 3G had two sets of Phillips head screws at the bottom, which are very tiny. And I do have a magnetic dish that will hold all the screws and components. Now with the screws off, you do want to get your suction cup. This is from iFixit. And all the tools that I'm using are from iFixit. So we're going to take off the 3.5-inch display. Once we do that, we pull slowly. You can see how the whole display comes up. And you can flip it over, and then you have your connections from the display. There's 3 of them. One already came up, number 1 here. So there's number 1 that came up, which is that ribbon cable. You have another ribbon cable, number 2, which is very easy. You can just use your fingernail and get that out. Number 3 is this little cable underneath it. This tiny cable here. This cable, number 3, which is this little one, is connected to this area right here. There's usually a little piece of black plastic that's down. You can probably see that part of it is still there. When I took this phone apart earlier, it broke. So that plastic would actually go up into a 45-degree angle, and you can pull out the ribbon cable without damaging the plastic connector. But since it's old, the plastic lock is disintegrated when I took it out, so that's why we're just going to take the phone apart further. And especially the display was having issues, so it's a good thing we're going to just take it apart. As you can see, this is the internals of the iPhone 3G. In the internals, you have your SIM card slot in the center, your camera, your 2-megapixel camera, 30-pin headphone jack at the top, speaker and microphone at the bottom. And we're going to go further into the phone. The display, it has the front panel glass, as well as the digitizer is infused on the front panel glass. And this back part here is your LCD. So your LCD is in this aluminum plate back here, and your digitizer's within that sector. Now these ribbon cables, they control the display, which is the LCD display, the digitizer for the touch sensor on the front of the glass, and also your proximity sensor, your accelerometer not the accelerometer, the ambient light sensor. Your proximity sensor for the earpiece is also controlled through this panel right here, which is connected to the main board on the iPhone through 3 ribbon cables. So further in the iPhone, you have other port labels. You have label 4 at the bottom corner, and label 4 is a main ribbon cable, which you can pop up. And we'll put the display over here. So number 4, you can pop that up, and that is a main connector between your bottom half of your iPhone, which is this part down here, which is your speaker, your bottom microphone, and your 30-pin dot connector at the bottom. So we're going to take that out now. We're going to look at that. So number 4, we'll just pop that up like that. And all of these cables that are pressure sensitive, they are 0 insertion force. So they're zip cables. So you don't need to screw them down or anything like that. So number 4, when that tab is up, you can see the connector for it down there at the bottom on the motherboard. The connector is a little bit corroded, so it looks like there's been water damage in here. But we'll take it apart further so we can look at everything. Within that, you do have 2 screws down here, Phillips head on this section and this section down here, and these little grooves that hold this bottom part of that logic board in place. So we're going to take that apart. So as I can tell with the iPhone 3G by looking at it, Apple has made it much simpler in this point in time of taking apart the iPhone, in terms of users trying to access it to replace the battery and things like that, because everything is numberized, which is perfect. And you can tell this little screw in my hand. It's that little screw for that part of that logic board. It's a Phillips head. And Apple was using standardized screws at the time. So Phillips head screws were mostly standard. So it wasn't like your hex screws or Torx screws or anything like that, or pentalobe. Okay, with those 2 screws off, we do have one more underneath the number 4 logic cable, the zip cable. It's right here on this little black plastic. So that probably holds in the bottom connector. Now, when we take apart the phones, there are going to be some adhesives within there. So you just want to be careful when taking it apart. Of course, use like a plastic spudger when taking it apart, but I'm not going to worry too much about that here. Okay, so that's unscrewed. We're going to take apart the rest of the screws on the logic board, and there's quite a few of them. And for those who are wondering, it's a good thing to take apart a phone that doesn't work or you don't care about destroying, because you can actually learn quite a bit of how it's made up and learn a little bit of your circuitry and learn a bit of your cables and how everything connects together, which is, I would say, it's very important. But don't take apart a phone or a device that you currently use as your day-to-day phone, because if you don't know how to put it back together, then you will be pretty much out of luck with that phone. And on this logic board, there are EMI shielding, which is for your radio interference. So that's pretty much blocking out signals from other chips, from outside sources that run on the same frequency and spectrum. So that's why there's like a big shield in here. With the number 5 is on, you can see there's a big metal shield, and so that's protecting all the sensitive components inside of the phone. Okay, we're getting off more of the screws. And just to let you guys know, this isn't a tutorial of how to take apart your iPhone or older phone. This is just like us looking through the components and just having a little fun here, taking it apart. Okay, so we got most of the screws. I got most of the screws off the logic board. And we are going to take out the vibration motor. So on the lower right hand corner, you have your vibration motor here, and that's just a motor that moves left to right, so it vibrates left and right, and it just vibrates along the internal case of the phone. So it's not a Taptic engine, but it's your basic vibration motor, and when it vibrates, it's connected near to the case, and it will vibrate along the case. So we will take that out. That also uses standardized Phillips head screws, and there's 2 of them. And there's a nice little cutout within the logic board of where it sits. Okay, so the vibration motor, it is screwed into that little section here, and it looks like it's a piece it looks like a piece of metal that comes off of the internal case, and it just screws into there, but we'll look at it in further when we get this out of there. That just pries up like that. So it pries off the logic board right next to it, and that's the little component of where it sits in. So you can see this little slot right here, it sits in here, and there are grooves, so I'm going to show it to you in detail. So there are grooves within there. If you guys can see it, there you go. You can see that little sets of plastic grooves in here, so right along in there. So that's where the vibration motor will vibrate along that plastic and make contact with the rest of the phone. And this little part right here, where it was screwed into, it looks like it's off of the metal frame that's inside of the iPhone, which the metal frame comes off of this little band here. So this silver band that goes around the iPhone 3G and 3GS models, the silver band here, houses the vibration motor and probably houses the Wi-Fi antennas are connected to it, and the cellular antennas are connected to it. This is what the vibration motor looks like. So it's very basic, took up very little space in the iPhone at this point in time. And you can see this is the motor. It's concaved and it's half cut, so it's like a half cut piece of metal, and it would just spin back and forth like that and vibrate along the case at high speed, and you got a little motor attached to it. So this is a little motor right in here, and that's the part of the metal that you would put your Phillips head screw and screw it back into the case. The back part here, where these 2 little springs are contact connections that go onto the logic board in this point, in this area. It would go along the logic board underneath this little section where my screwdriver is pointing to. It goes underneath there and it makes contact with the logic board. So in your iPhone, when you would switch the sensor here, the mute switch, go down, it would send a signal down along the case, down from one end of the logic board to the other end, to the vibration motor to turn on, essentially. And then when you put your mute switch back up, the ring would turn on and the vibration motor would go back to a secondary sound system. Not sound system, but secondary alert system. And on the bottom part of the vibration motor, you do get a blue piece of plastic. And that blue piece of plastic does have the same ridges on it. It's just it's a soft piece of plastic. It's nothing too rigid, but it has those little ridges in it. So that ridges lines up with the black part of the case to make contact for their vibration motor. And it probably dissipates some heat through the bottom there on this little plastic to transfer to the case to dissipate some heat. So we'll put that component over here. So if you ever wanted to replace your vibration motor on a iPhone 3G, you can do so in a very easy fashion, but you might want to take out the whole logic board just to get to that component, just to be safe, so you don't damage the 2 contacts on it. Okay, we're going to go towards the top of the iPhone. So the top right-hand side, you have your 2-megapixel camera module, which is unchanged from the iPhone 2G that came out before it. And it has one Phillips head screw on the right side. So that just comes out like that. And it has a little bar. So that's your little retention bar right there. So that's a little retention bar for the camera. So we'll put that aside. And okay. Now, at the top of it, there is another Phillips head screw that's embedded onto the plastic. So we're going to try to work that out. And it's all Phillips head screw. It's like, so it's a very easy process for you to take it out. But it looks like that screw will have to be accessed later on because it is near the SIM card holder. And we will get to the camera. We'll come back around for the camera. Okay, so we got one screw out for the camera on the right corner. Now we'll go over to the left side. We'll look at number 5 and 6. And on the left-hand side, we can take out another screw for the 3.5 millimeter headphone jack. So that's in the left-hand corner of the iPhone. And we are going to take out the screw that's lower. That's one lower from the headphone jack, and that's connected to number 6, which that looks like to be part of your vibration motor. So number 6 looks like to be a circuit connector for possibly the vibration motor, but we'll take a look at that. And it looks like you can just pop it off with your finger, which you can. So that comes off, and that cable is attached to the camera. Okay, so that is part of the camera. That cable wraps down and around to the camera, it looks like. So we will get to that in a minute. We do have another connector right here next to number 6 that I just lifted up. Is this one right here I can see, which is a silver plated connector. So we will open that. That connector looks like it's connected to the camera. So we will take a look. Yes, okay, so the cable, number 5, which has an arrow, is pointed to this connector right here, which is part of the camera. Not part of the camera, part of the 3.5 millimeter headphone jack on this side. And the headphone jack should be able to come out at this point in time. If not, we will keep taking apart the phone and get to it. Okay, so number 6 I was correct the first time. That's connected to your vibration switch over here, your mute switch, which sends a signal down to the component over here, which is your vibration motor. So we got to take apart the phone further to get the 2 top hand components out. So we will work our way towards the bottom of the iPhone. So the bottom half has your other half of your logic board. And on that part, which we can take out. So the bottom half just has your speaker, microphone, and your 30-pin dock connector at the bottom, which that looks like you can lift it out. A little piece of tape that says do not remove down in this corner, but we don't have to worry about that. And okay, so that little board at the bottom here, this little plastic board, looks like it can come out. There is a way to get that board out. And we can work our way around the phone in the meantime. I did notice that there is another screw here on the right, next to the headphone jack, right where the SIM card slot sits in this corner, so we'll take that out. So we'll get that screw out. So when they were building the iPhone 3G and other iPhones, of course, they took a lot of time engineering everything together, so that's why it's very compacted and everything. And of course, the logic board is very compact on the newer iPhones. And you can really see where they started from, which is very cool to see where everything started from. Okay, so I can pry up the headphone jack a little bit. Hold it, but it won't let me move it. And, okay, there is another screw underneath number 6. Okay, there is another screw under the ribbon cable for number 6, which you have to move out the way. That probably will release another component for us. Yeah, it looks like it releases part of the logic board from what I can see here. And we'll go back over to the camera. We'll try to work out the camera. Which, okay, yes, the camera, you can take that out by lifting it from the right side. And here's the 2 megapixel camera. So it's out of its little enclosure. So there it is. So it's routed to the back of the logic board that's connected to the back. And the headphone jack should be able to come out too, if possible. There we go. We're able to, got a push back on it. And the headphone jack is able to come out with some force, but we will just snap that back into place and try not to pull it out with force if necessary. Yeah, we'll leave that in there because it's probably glued down, and I want to just take a look at that a little bit in detail. So you can tell next to the camera where that screw used to go down into, that Phillips head screw, and that screw holder is part of that metal chassis. So it's integrated, the metal chassis is actually infused onto the black plastic. On the camera, there is 2 screws that are connected to the frame, and another one's to the right of the other one that we couldn't take out before, but we can take out that one. That one looks accessible. So we will try to take that screw out. And that screw, these 2 screws look like they're holding in the power button, because the power button's directly above the camera, and that's what it looks like they're holding in. Okay, I'm able to get to the other one. And yes, that is holding on to the power button, because the power button is mounted to that plastic, to that black plastic, which is mounted to the frame. Now, we'll push the camera back into its little socket, and then that should come out, the power button. Okay. With this little plastic here, I can see the power button comes out. That is also routed to the bottom. Okay, so we will have to take out the rest of the phone, of course. As we work our way to it, we are going to unscrew the volume rocker. So here's your volume up and down. And here is the screws, the 3 screws that are bolted to the frame that hold in the ribbon cables for the volume buttons. And that little panel should pop off for us. So let's take a look at that little panel. And yes, that panel pops away. And the ribbon cable is actually infused onto that panel. So we'll take a look at that in further detail. And we are going to remove this sticker at the bottom here that says "Do not remove," since that's probably how you get to the bottom half of the phone. So this little sticker down here, we are just going to remove it. And as you remove it, that is another screw. So that's why it couldn't come off. So Apple did that so users can't just take apart the phone. Okay, so after we peeled that "Do not remove" sticker, we can remove the final screw that's holding the whole logic board together. And that little Phillips head screw is out. Now we should be able just to lift, and as we do that, you can see the main logic board just lifts away from the bottom half, and now we are at the top half of it where it's stuck in. So we'll get the camera back out. So camera's back out. And I'll just work it out like that. And okay. This is your main logic board on the iPhone 3G. And we are going to take off these panels and look at the processor underneath. And there are two logic boards that are together. Well, two separate areas. I mean, on the logic board is one big logic board, but it's two separate areas for the controllers and processor. Here you have your battery. You have your wiring that runs to the power button, which now that's power button wiring. So that's it. Your power button is literally this little piece of metal and plastic that clicks with the button here that just came out. So that's your button. So that's your little button. And that's your connectors and everything. So that will go over to the side. Your headphone jack is in its mountain here, and that is actually connected. The ribbon cables are in threes. So you got your main one that runs to the power button that also is jointed to the headphone jack. And it looks like the headphone jack has some other things connected to it. So we will take a look at what it's connected to. And there is another screw. So Apple put another screw holding that ribbon cable down. So this ribbon cable looks like to be your main cable between all three components. If this cable ever failed in your iPhone back in the day, you might have lost all three components, or maybe just one or two. Depends on how the signal in from the processor handles all of these components. Here's your battery down here. Okay, so it looks like that's all together. So here's your battery, has a little tab here. We will try to get the battery out. We'll get the battery out in a little bit. But that's your little tab. We'll probably pull it out or just leave the battery in there. And as you can see, the battery has no bubbles in it or any type of bubbled up or anything like that or expanded. So the battery is in good condition for an iPhone of this age. And we're going to peel that little bit of ribbon cable off. Now the cable is still good, so if you peel it off, you got to be just really gentle and just take your time. And there you go. That's the volume buttons are connected to it. So it looks like the four major components at the top here are connected together. And it comes off easily. And yes. Okay, so it's like that. Okay, so that's your main ribbon cable. And that ribbon cable should also be connected to the component here, your volume up, your sleep wake, not your sleep wake, but your mute switch. Okay, so the mute switch can pop out here, so it comes off there, and you got another piece of plastic that comes off. That's probably one of the clips that was up here, the little plastic clips. Okay, so we're gonna just okay. So it looks like that's in there. That might be a little bit of work will take place there. So the bottom half we're going to look at, and that's actually where your other main connectors are. And this just pulls straight out. And as you can see, there is a piece something here that broke off. And this is just a little bit of adhesive tape that was at the bottom. And that adhesive tape was probably on here. So this is your bottom half, and this sensor, not sensor, but this big ribbon cable back here probably also has your 3G antenna, which is grooved at the bottom here. So there is plastic grooved along in here. So that's probably your antenna was mostly at the bottom, like it was on the original iPhone at the bottom, but here it was here. It was still at the bottom on the iPhone 3G, but since the whole back was plastic, it can use the whole back, including the metal frame, as an antenna. So it didn't matter where they placed it, but they did it at the bottom for convenience, and you can tell that they wanted to do everything convenient. And you can see you have your speaker, microphone at the bottom, you got your 30 pin all wrapped up together. So component number 4 here is very easy to replace. You just have to take apart the whole phone to do it, but if this was broken, you could easily do that. And that will go over to the side. So now with everything out, the only thing left is the battery, which is probably, I'm not going to take that out. I'm going to leave the battery in the phone. And now we have the components at the top here. And as you can see, it's all one piece of plastic with the metal frame and enclosed in it, so it's bonded together, of course. And we are going to try to get these cables out without damaging them. And okay, with just a little pull, there it goes. So here's your four major components. You have your power button, that's on this part. You have your 3.5 millimeter headphone jack. You have your volume up and down. And you have your mute switch and mute and ringer switch, which is here. So it's on this ribbon cable. So this, if you ever needed to replace a single component, you would just have to pull it all out and just replace the whole cable in together as one component. The battery is down here, and there's a screw that came out. Okay. And also that little piece of plastic for the volume up and down. So here's the plastic for that. So that's it right there. It would just move. It's on a little part of the phone. So it's a static piece. It's a one piece of plastic, but when you move it inside the phone, it would go from the orange button to just clear to let you know what mode you had it on, of course. And here is, oops, sorry guys. Here is the phone. This is the case with everything left in it. You have number 6, which is connected to like another sensor within the phone, and you have your battery, which this battery is right here in the middle. Has your nice little pull tab. It's original Apple battery, and that is your connector to the motherboard of the battery indicator and things like that. This will stay like that, and this is the back of it, and that will just stay. Now moving on to the logic board and components like that. So the logic board, now in center, we are going to look at that. We are going to take apart the majority of the RFI shielding, so we can take a look. Now this logic board is the same on the 3GS and the original. Well, it's same on the 3GS. The original has a stack logic board. And here's the back of it. So you can actually see on this part right here, these contacts line up with the one in the battery, lines up to those 4 contact pins on the logic board. And there was the 2 here, the 2 contact pins here, line up with the 2 contacts on the vibration motor. So it would just go in and contact like that on the logic board. And the back has feels like a plastic resin to keep the heat of the logic board and the battery like separated in a way, so it's almost like a heat sink, I would say. So it's a little layer to protect both the board and the battery from overheating. And you have another controller chip. So this controller chip here Looks to be controller for power controller. That's probably power management chip right here. And a lot of them are under this EFI shielding, so we'll try to get this off as best as we can. And you're going to have your processor underneath it, your RAM, and your storage will be underneath all the little shielding on the board. So we will try to pop that off if it's possible. A lot of times they soldered it down so users can't pop it off because it would protect important sensors and chips underneath it. And we're going to try to pry it up, but it looks like it is soldered into place. But we are going to remove this piece of copper tape here. So maybe we can remove that, and it might just let us get some access into the shielding. So it looks pretty interesting on how the iPhone was designed and built, of course. And with that off, you can see the separation between the two shielding boards on the logic board. And, oh, looks like the shielding does come off. There we go. We'll pop it off here. Takes a little work to get to it, to get it to start coming off, but it started coming off on the right-hand side. So the shielding is going to have your Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, and all the other little controllers with it. Okay, so we'll try to work this off. We'll pop off the camera while we're at it, which connects onto the back with another zip-in cable, zip logic connector. So that's your camera. And all of these components are going to stay out of the phone, and I will put them in a little display case. So that's why we're not trying to really destroy anything on the phone. Alright guys, I finally got off the two RFI shieldings, and both of the shieldings have a little sticker, which is this one right here and the one I peeled off down here. These two stickers are for water, so that lets you know if water damage has occurred on the phone, which this one does. There's a little gasket, rubber gasket here that protected the part of the SIM card slot, which was pretty nice when they were putting on this shielding. On the bottom of both shielding, you do have a piece of thermal tape. So this thermal tape covers all the major chips and dissipates heat out of them onto the metal, which is then transferred to the frame of the iPhone and then dissipated like that without any cooling system. So those two components can go to the side. And here is the main logic board. As you can see, the main logic board does have some water damage and corrosion here, here, and there. And on the logic board, you do have your Apple processor, which is here. And that's one of your main Apple processor. This is made by Samsung. This chip wasn't officially called an A series chip, but this was before the A4. And you do have your image signaling processor. You do have storage on here. Your RAM, your other controller chips are on this logic board on this side, and that's how it sits inside of the iPhone. So the processor is on the right corner, and your SIM card is at the top. On the bottom of it, it's just your contact connectors, your little power controller, and this shielding can't come off. So this shielding is right above the SIM card slot. So this shielding is for your cell phone tower. So AT&T and Broadcom is the company that sends over the Wi-Fi specs, Bluetooth specifications, and chips and things like that. They probably built that into here, and probably some of the chips for Bluetooth and Wi-Fi are on the front side of the logic board. This is probably for AT&T's chipset, which is back in here, their broadband chipset. So that's it for the logic board. Put that down there. We'll take a look at the display. So with the display, you have your physical home button, which the home button is built into the metal and plastic frame. When you click that, it sends a signal along the ribbon cable to one of the 3 ribbon cables at the top to the logic board, which then processes the signal of you hitting the home button to go home from any app. So we will take apart this LCD. So underneath this aluminum frame is your LCD display. So we will take off the screws surrounding the side, and there's 2 of them. And there are 2 on either side, so there's a total of 4 of them. And here's some black plastic, and underneath this section of black plastic on the right hand side does have another screw, so you will have to remove it. So we will remove that. More than likely Apple had put this tape here for maybe a warranty reason or a protective part for the sensors that were built into the case. So when you would put this assembly back together, this piece of tape would protect it. And it looks like underneath this tape are another screw here, another screw here, and these are your contacts, copper contacts. So it's probably for connection to the case to hold it in. So yeah, this tape was probably used to protect the sensitive ribbon cables that probably ran near it when the phone was connected together. So we will take out those 2 screws. So there's a total of 6 screws on here. So we'll just pull all the screws off. And we do have one more at the top on the right corner. We'll remove that. And right here is another ribbon cable, which is connected to the outside. And that ribbon cable is held down. It looks like it's holding down this plastic frame here. And that plastic frame is covering up your earpiece at the top here, your top speaker. Okay, we'll try to remove that. Okay, so this little shield in here. Okay, so that shielding can be moved, but you have to be a little bit careful. So we'll work at that in just a little bit. We'll try to get this major component off if possible. We'll work at the bottom here, and it does seem to come off. And with a little bit of force, I was able to get part of the corner here to pop off. And with that, okay, with that being said, okay, we can pop off this little back shielding of the LCD, and it looks like it's probably part of it. And with that being said, yes, this is a little mirror, and that probably reflects the backlighting off of this LCD here. So this is actually the back of the LCD, and you can see that when you turn on the phone, the light is gonna reflect off of this mirror, which is on here like so, and that will reflect it from being not seen to the front of the phone, which that glass does come apart. And this is your main LCD right here. And ribbon cable number 1 is actually for the LCD controller. So the mirror is like this, and the light turns on the back here. So you can see there's lights at the top, and there's mini lights probably on this side that when it turns on, it illuminates the whole thing. So then the mirror sits on it like that. Then when it turns on, instead of it bleeding through to the inside of the phone, the mirror reflects it back out to you. And that's probably how it works, more than likely. So that's the 2 components, and you got your little controller chip up here. So ribbon cable number 1 connects to the board, and then the board sends information to the controller chip, which is right in here. That little controlling chip to change the brightness, use the ambient light sensor to change the brightness in certain lighting conditions of the room. And if you change the brightness on the phone, it would send a signal to the controller chip from the logic board to here, to this main component here, which is your LCD panel, to turn the brightness up or down. And to also, if you hit the power button to put it in sleep, sends a signal to the motherboard, to the LCD, to go into sleep mode. So that's that right there. And with the front glass is one piece of glass that has your home button, which is here, which is infused into the plastic portion at the bottom here. Has a little ribbon cable down here, which connects onto the board at a pressure sensitive location. So probably more than likely when it goes on, it's like that. So this is how the inside of the iPhone looks without the LCD in place. It's like that. It's like this. So that's how it looks. So you got your pressure sensitive, so it hooks onto a portion of the board, and that probably hooks onto part of the bottom board here. Because the reason why I say that, because the screws here, they do mount into this area above it, and it does fit perfectly at the bottom here. So in this area, when you hit it, it's connected. And there is 2 pressure contacts on the board. So board number 4 has 2 pressure contacts here, which line up perfectly with the home button. So that's how your home button gets contact to the bottom part of the phone. And then you have your logic board, which, bam, look at that. Connects up just like that. And that's it. That's how the iPhone communicates from top to bottom. Just like that. And it makes sense why this bottom part is plastic, and it has the same shape as number 4 here. Bottom part, the bottom connector. And you can see that up here, this part right here, that little ribbon cable and stuff like that, your digitizer is embedded onto the front glass. So your digitizer is probably hooked into a controller, and it's usually like a thin layer applied to the glass, which you can probably see that right where my screwdriver is, this little ribbon cable here, and you see there's like black plastic along it. That's the digitizer that's infused over this panel right here. So it's infused over this back panel. So it's not on the LCD itself. It's not on the LCD. It's infused onto the cover glass on the back portion, and on the back portion of the cover glass. So when you touch on the front, it automatically recognizes where you're touching on the display. At the top, you have your sensor pack up here, which is your earpiece and your ambient light sensor, proximity sensor for the earpiece, and another sensor on the corner. And that's it for tearing down the iPhone 3G. If you guys like these type of teardowns, I will be tearing down some other Apple products if I can get my hands on some broken Apple products I can take apart and look at them. I say it's a fun little video we can do once in a while, just to look at some products and things like that, because it's very good to take a look at how older products and newer products are built. And it's just a fun little project to do on the channel. And that's it, guys. I mean, if you liked the video, give it a thumbs up. If you didn't, you can give it a thumbs down. Subscribe for more. And like always, I'll see you guys in the next video. Later.